Hi guys, welcome to Grammar and Writing Lesson 72. Today is more grammar, but let's get started with our vocabulary first. So we have a root today that we're learning, a root word. Our root focus is gnosis. Gnosis. Again, this is a Greek word. So the G is silent. It's just gnosis. You need that G, but it's silent. It doesn't make any sound. Not gnosis, just gnosis. The definition is knowledge. Knowledge. So when you see this word gnosis, it has something to do with knowing something. Prognosis. Prognosis. No, it's not prog or prognosis. And here the G is not silent. Here we say prognosis, not prognosis, prognosis. The definition is the prediction of the probable course and outcome of a disease. So this means how a particular sickness is going to go. We are predicting what's going to happen, predicting when people are going to get better. That's the idea behind prognosis. For example, the doctor's prognosis concerning my illness was complete recovery. So the prediction of probable outcome is that person will get completely better. Diagnosis. Diagnosis. Again, here we do say the G. So you're probably thinking, Miss Ashley, the G is not silent. Well, it just kind of depends on how it fits in the word. But anyway, so the diagnosis is the labeling of a disease after tests and examination. The labeling of a disease after tests and examination. So prognosis is knowing what's going to happen with a disease. Diagnosis is knowing what the disease actually is. That's the difference. So prognosis, knowing what's going to happen with it. It's the prediction of the probable course. That means like how it's going to go, what's going to happen, how serious it's going to get, and outcome of a disease. Diagnosis, the labeling of a disease after tests and examinations. For example, the nurse practitioner's diagnosis of the child's eye problem was pink eye. That's pink eye. So diagnosis is what it is. Agnosia. Agnosia. This is the loss of ability to interpret sensory stimuli. So things that get your senses going. You don't know what they are. This includes not being able to smell, not being able to hear, not being able to feel. For example, oops, sorry, that is not the example. I don't know what the example is for agnosia. This is from the last lesson. You probably remember that. Let's say, because of the man's agnosia, he was not able to smell the dinner. Something to that effect. Agnostic. Agnostic. This is someone who believes the existence of God is unknowable. So it's something that you can't know is agnostic. Remember when you have the A in front of something, that means not. So not is the idea of not knowing. So agnosia, you do not know the sensory stimuli. Agnostic, you say that you do not know if God exists. For example, the agnostic did not see any reason to go to church. Okay, let's get some practice. Fill in the blank with the correct vocabulary word. Number 1, and blank doesn't know if there is a God. Number 2, a temporary case of blank left him unable to interpret the sounds. Number 3, the doctor's blank was that the growth was a benign tumor. Number 4, the blank for skin cancer is excellent. But why not prevent it in the first place? And number 5, the Greek root meaning knowledge is blank. Okay, if you need some time to think about it, go ahead and pause the video. Number 1, an agnostic does not know if there is a God. Number 2, a temporary case of agnosia left him unable to interpret the sounds. The doctor's diagnosis was that the growth was a benign tumor. So he's figuring out what the disease is. So it's his diagnosis. The prognosis for skin cancer is excellent, but why not prevent it in the first place? So saying how skin cancer is going to end is usually pretty good. It doesn't end with death, but try to prevent it. The Greek root meaning knowledge is gnosis. All right, let's jump into the grammar portion of the lesson. We're talking about verbs. So we're beginning a brand new unit. We've been reviewing sentences, capitalization, and punctuation. I know, long review, huh? So now we're going to jump into verbs. Woohoo! Everyone's favorite, right? Starting off nice and simple with action verbs. Action verbs. So action verbs express physical or mental action. For example, Dylan considered his choices. Then he picked an apple. So in the first part, we have this semicolon here, so that shows us we have two sets of subjects and verbs. So look for your first verb. What is it? Dylan considered his choices. Considered, that's your first verb. This is mental action because he's thinking. That's what considered means. It's to pensar. Then he picked an apple. What's your verb here? Picked. Very good. This is a physical action. It's something that he's actually doing with his hands. There's movement, so it's a physical action. But considered, that is also an action. It's just a mental action. Something is doing work, your brain, so it is still an action verb. But not all verbs are action verbs. So some verbs are linking verbs. A linking verb links a word that describes or renames to the subject. So it's saying it connects. That's the idea of linking. A link is like a piece of chain or something like that. It links, it connects a word that describes or renames to the subject. So it connects the subject with something that describes it or renames it. So this chart is of the linking verbs. When you need to be on the lookout for these verbs, for these words that act as verbs. The be verbs, the being verbs, am, is, are, was, were, be, being, been. Remember there's a song. Am, is, are, was, were, be, being, been. Am, is, are, was, were, be, being, been. Remember singing that? So those are verbs you should know. And then you also have, or to remind you, these can also be used as helping verbs. So they help out an action verb sometimes, and we'll talk more about when you need them. Then on the other side of your box, you have linking verbs that are sometimes linking verbs, sometimes action verbs. It just depends. Taste, feel, smell, sound, look, appear, become, seem, grow, remain, stay. So sometimes it's describing an action, but sometimes it links. It's not an action, so it connects the subject to another word in the sentence. All right, let's practice. Claire was a camp counselor last summer. Find your verb in that sentence. Okay, so it should jump out at you immediately. Was is your verb. It's your being verb. Now always look around to see if there's anything else. Is there anything else? No. Now what does it link the subject? The subject is Claire, because who was? Claire was. Claire was what? She was a camp, whoa, sorry for the circle. She was a camp counselor last summer. So Claire was camp counselor. It links camp counselor back to Claire. Let's look at the second one. The battered wooden trunk looked very old. What's your verb? Okay, it's the past tense of look. It's looked. Is this an action verb or a linking verb? It's a linking verb. It links your subject, which is what? Trunk. To the trunk looked old. Old connects back to trunk because what did it look? It looked old. The old trunk. Let's try some more. Buddy eagerly looked inside the antique trunk. What's your verb? Okay, it should jump out at you because of the one we just had. Looked. Who looked? Buddy looked. Okay, so is this an action or is this a linking? It's an action because it's something that he's doing. It's not linking your subject to something after it. He's doing it. He's physically looking. Kyle grew quiet during the discussion. What's your verb? Grew. Very good. Now, is this action or linking? Linking, because it's linking your subject, which is Kyle, who grew. Kyle grew to quiet. It's not talking about Kyle actually growing. There's no physical action taking place. It just links your subject to something that's happening. So you have to ask yourself, when you have these verbs, is something physically happening? Look at this one. The apple pie tasted delicious. What's your verb? Tasted. Very good. Is this linking or is this action? Well, what tasted? The pie, the apple pie tasted. Does the apple pie have a tongue, a lingua? No, it doesn't. So this is linking. It's linking it to delicious. There's no physical action taking place. The apple pie can't actually taste anything. So it's linking. So that's how you need to decide. You need to ask yourself, is there a physical action taking place? If yes, then it's an action verb. If no, it's only linking. Okay, so your homework is to complete. It's got pages 122 and 123 on the bottom. It should be the first grammar page in your packet. It has more practice 1 through 20 and review set 1 through 7. So make sure you look for those pages and make sure you do the correct pages. And the instructions should be all about doing or identifying verbs as linking or action. Okay, let me know if you have any questions. I will see you in the next lesson.